Hey everyone, and welcome to our explainer. Today we're diving into something that affects pretty much all of us who have a job. Workplace safety. You know, we all go to work assuming someone's got our back, but the actual system behind it all can be a bit of a mystery. So let's pull back the curtain and see how it really works.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with a question for you. Take a second and think about your own job. Who is really responsible for making sure you get home in one piece at the end of the day? Is it your manager? Is it you? The company owner? Maybe someone else you haven't even thought of.
And you might think you have an easy answer, but it's actually a bit more complicated than that. That's because the fundamental principle of modern workplace safety is that it's a shared responsibility. No one person, no single group can possibly handle it alone. There's actually a technical term for everyone who's involved, a SHE stakeholder. That SHE just stands for safety, health, and environment. But put simply, a stakeholder is anyone, and I mean anyone, who has a part to play in keeping the workplace and its people safe.
And this quote right here, it really nails it. Think of it like a sports team, right? If your offense, your defense, and your coaches aren't all working from the same playbook, the whole team is going to fall apart. Well, workplace safety is exactly the same deal.
And the stakes? They couldn't be higher. When everyone does their part, we're not just ticking boxes. We're actively preventing accidents and injuries. We're cutting down on work-related illnesses. And of course, we're staying on the right side of the law. It's about creating a culture that protects everyone, workers, the public, and the environment.
So, if it's a shared job, who exactly is sharing it? Well, the best way to wrap your head around this is to picture workplace safety like a big, strong building. That building is held up by three crucial pillars, and if even one of those pillars starts to weaken, the whole thing could come crashing down.
3. That's the magic number to remember. Because when it comes right down to it, in just about any workplace you can think of, a truly safe environment rests on these three key players doing their part. And here are our pillars. Number 1, the employer, the organization running the show. Number 2, the employee, the person on the ground doing the work. And number 3, the government, the body that sets the rules for everybody else.
And here's the most important part to get. While each of them has their own separate jobs to do, their responsibilities are all completely connected. What one does, or doesn't do, directly affects the other two. You just can't separate them.
All right, let's break it down. Starting with that first foundational pillar, the employer. This is your company, the organization, or the person who's ultimately in charge.
So, we're talking about the entity that owns, controls, or manages the place where you work. You can think of them as the architects of the entire work environment. They draw the blueprints for safety.
Their role is absolutely fundamental. They're the ones who have to provide a safe place to begin with, design work processes that don't put people at risk, and give their employees all the tools they need to stay safe, whether that's proper equipment, solid training, or just enough time to do the job right.
And listen, this is a point we really can't stress enough. Even though safety is a shared responsibility, the law is crystal clear on this one. The employer has the primary duty of care. Why? Because they hold the most power to shape the work environment, so they also hold the lion's share of the responsibility.
Okay, so let's move on to pillar number 2, and this is the one where, most of us come in, the employee.
I mean, you can have the safest building in the world and the best equipment money can buy, but none of that means a thing without the active, conscious participation of the person who's actually doing the work.
This is really the active side of safety. It's about personal responsibility. It means following the rules, using the safety gear you're given, and using it correctly. And always thinking about how your actions might affect not just you, but your coworkers and maybe even the public.
And this is why this pillar is so incredibly critical. A perfectly designed safety system can be completely undone by one single unsafe act. As this quote points out, the choices that employees make moment to moment have a direct and powerful impact on everything. So, we've got the employer who provides the safe framework, and we've got the employee who works safely inside that framework. But what holds the whole thing together? What ensures there's a level playing field for everyone? Well, that's where our third and final pillar comes into play. The government really acts as both the rule maker and the referee for the entire system. They're not physically in the workplace every single day, but their job is to set the baseline, the minimum standards for safety that absolutely everyone has to follow.
So they're the ones writing the rule book, the legislation. They enforce those rules with things like inspections and audits, and they're the ones who step in to investigate when things go seriously wrong. They make sure both employers and employers are held to the same standard.
You can see here how it all fits together, right? It's like a cycle that reinforces itself. Step 1, employers create the safe systems. Step 2, employees follow those rules and use those systems correctly. And Step 3, the government oversees it all, making sure the laws are actually being followed. Each part is totally dependent on the others to work.
Because at the end of the day, real safety isn't just a manual full of rules. It's a living, breathing relationship between these three groups. It only works when all three pillars, all three stakeholders, are actively cooperating and doing their part. If one of them fails, the whole structure is at risk of falling apart.
And that brings us right back to where we started. If you take away just one thing from this, let it be this. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a huge corporation, a brand new hire on your first day, or a government inspector, you have a role to play. Safety is everyone's job. So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this thought. Now that you know the three pillars holding up workplace safety, which one are you? And more importantly, are you holding up your end of the deal?
You know, when we head off to work, we all have this one basic expectation, right? That we'll come home safe at the end of a day. But have you ever really stopped to think about who's legally responsible for making sure that happens? Because it's not just about common sense, it's actually the law. So today, we're going to unpack the absolute core duties every employer has to keep you safe.
All right, let's just cut right to the chase. When you're on the clock, who's actually responsible for your safety? I mean, is it on you? Is it your crew? Or does the buck stop somewhere else?
The answer? Well, it's the employer, no doubt about it. And listen, employer is a really broad term. It could be anyone from a small-time contractor to a massive global company, or even a government department. The bottom line is, if they own or control the workplace, the responsibility is theirs, plain and simple.
Okay, so this responsibility, it's not just some friendly suggestion, you know? It's a huge legal principle, and it's called the general duty of care. Seriously, think of this as the foundation of a house. Everything else we're going to talk about today, it's all built right on top of this one single idea.
And what makes this duty so powerful are two little words: at all times. That means this obligation doesn't just disappear during a maintenance shutdown, it doesn't get put on pause during an emergency, it's on 24/7 during every single part of the job. It's a constant, non-stop responsibility.
Okay, so how does this big idea, this duty of care, actually turn into real, concrete rules? Well, this is where we start to see the real teeth behind it all and, the very serious consequences for not playing by the book.
See, an employer's responsibilities are backed up by a whole bunch of laws and regulations. We're talking everything from national safety legislation and labor laws all the way to international standards. They all kind of work together to create this protective shield for both workers and the environment.
And this is why it's all taken so seriously. This is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, failing to comply isn't just a slap on the wrist. We're talking about huge fines, work getting shut down completely, and the kind of damage to a company's reputation that can take years to fix. The stakes are incredibly high.
All right, so enough with the legal stuff for a second. Let's get practical. What are the actual things, the real building blocks that an employer has to provide? What does a truly safe workplace even look like?
Well, first off, it all starts with the space itself. The employer has to make sure the physical environment is free from obvious dangers. And that means everything. Clear walkways, good lighting, making sure any scaffolding is rock solid. Heck, even just basic housekeeping to stop people from slipping and tripping. That's a core part of the job. Next up, you've got the resources. It's not good enough to just hand someone a tool. It's got to be the right tool, and it's got to be in good working order. And this duty covers all the essentials too, like having first aid kits ready, fire extinguishers on hand, and putting up actual barriers to keep you away from the dangerous stuff.
And of course, a huge piece of this safety toolkit is PPE, personal protective equipment. You got to think of this as your last line of defense against a specific danger. Like a hard hat protecting your head from something falling, or gloves keeping nasty chemicals off your hands. Now here's the really crucial part. Your employer can't just tell you, hey, go buy your own gear. Nope, they have to provide it, and it has to be free, at no cost to you. And they can't just toss it at you and walk away. They are legally required to train you on how to use it right, how to take care of it, and what its limits are. Because let's be real, a hard hat doesn't do you any good if you don't wear it properly.
But, it's not just about having the right stuff and a clean space. That's really only half the story. A genuinely safe workplace needs active systems. We're talking about planning, training, and how to respond when things go wrong. Safety is definitely not a passive thing.
Think about it like this. There's a world of difference between just writing a rule book and actually making sure people follow it. An employer can't just print out a safety manual, stick it on a shelf, and call it a day. They have to be out there supervising the work, making sure the rules are being followed, and stepping in when they see something unsafe. That enforcement piece, it's everything.
And a huge part of being active is doing a risk assessment. This is all about being proactive, getting ahead of the problem. It's a formal way of looking for things that could cause harm before anyone gets hurt. You find the hazards, figure out how bad they could be, and then put controls in place to get rid of the risk or at least dial it way down.
Of course, none of this works if people aren't trained properly. It's the employer's job to make sure every single worker knows how to do their job safely. And that means a whole range of things, from the first safety briefing you get, to those quick daily toolbox talks about what's going on that day, all the way to practicing for emergencies.
Look, even with the best plans in the world, sometimes things go wrong. And if an incident does happen, the employer's job isn't over. It continues. They have to investigate what happened, and this is key, not to point fingers and blame people, but to find out the real reason it happened so they can make changes to stop it from ever happening again.
Okay, so let's put it all together. You've got the safe space, you've got the right gear, you've got the active systems for training and planning. When all those pieces click into place, what do you get? What's the big payoff at the end of the day?
Well, one thing that's really important to remember is that this duty of care doesn't just stop at the factory gate. A responsible employer also makes sure their work isn't polluting the land, the water, or the air around them. Yeah, protecting the environment is a huge part of the overall safety picture these days.
And the payoff for doing all this, right? It's huge. When an employer actually follows through on all these duties, accidents go way down and people stay healthy. But it's more than just staying out of trouble with the law. Productivity goes up. Morale gets better. A safe workplace is just a better, more successful workplace, period.
And that really brings us to the most critical takeaway here. The employer is like the central gear in the whole safety machine. If they fail, if they drop the ball on their duties, it's not just a small problem. The whole system can fall apart, and that puts every single person on that job site at risk.
So that leaves us with one last thing to think about. When you look at how all these duties connect, you have to ask, is safety just about avoiding a fine or ticking a box? Or is it something way bigger? Is it actually the very foundation that you need to build a workplace that's not just safe, but also healthy, productive, and truly successful?
When you think about workplace safety, what's the first thing that comes to mind? A hard hat? Steel-toed boots? Well, the single most important safety feature, it's not a piece of equipment at all. It's you. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why you are the very first line of defense. So let's just start with this idea right here. Now, that sounds good, but it's so much more than just a catchy phrase, right? This is really the core principle of workplace safety. It's not about a bunch of rules handed down from on high. It's all about the choices you make, every single minute of every day. So let's explore what that really means. So when we talk about this first line of defense, who are we actually talking about? Well, it's pretty simple. It's everybody. It doesn't matter if you're operating heavy machinery, supervising a site, or working as a technician. Every single thing you do, it has a ripple effect on the safety of the entire workplace. And this really requires a total shift in how you think about safety. It's just not a spectator sport. Your role is to be an active participant, always aware, always engaged, not just some passive observer hoping things go well. Okay, so let's get into the specifics. What does this actually look like day to day? First up, let's talk about the foundational duties that are really the bedrock of your role in safety. I want you to think of these as your 4 core commitments. It all starts with your own responsible actions, right? Then it extends to protecting yourself and your coworkers. And finally, it's about actively supporting your employer's bigger safety, health, and environment, or as you'll see it, SHE systems. All right, now let's kind of zoom in a little bit and bring the focus inward, because really, before you can even think about protecting anyone else, it all has to start with you. Okay, these right here, these are the absolute non-negotiables. We're talking about simple stuff like personal hygiene, but also the discipline to follow safe work practices every single time. It's about having the wisdom to avoid those risky shortcuts, and of course the commitment to obey all the safety rules. These daily habits are basically your personal shield. But let's be real. What happens when a hazard just can't be completely designed or engineered away? Well, that's where personal protective equipment, you know it as PPE, becomes absolutely critical. It is, and I mean this literally, the last line of defense standing between you and some serious harm. And here's the crucial point. Using PPE the right way, it isn't just about throwing it on and calling it a day. It's a whole process, a continuous 4-step process that you own. You've got to wear it when it's required, use it exactly the way it was intended, keep it in good shape, and, this is a big one, immediately report any damage so you can get a replacement. Okay, so once you've got your personal safety locked down, that circle of protection gets bigger. Now we've got to talk about your team, because like we said before, every single thing you do has a ripple effect. And you know what? One of the simplest, but honestly most powerful ways to protect your team is just through good housekeeping. A clean, organized workspace, that's not just about looking good. It's a fundamental act of teamwork. And what's really interesting here is just how much of an impact these basic actions can have. I mean, think about it. Keeping things tidy directly cuts down on slips and trips. It minimizes fire risks by getting rid of fuel sources, and it makes sure that emergency exits and walkways are always clear. All right, listen up. Before you flip a switch, before you press a button, before you turn a key on any piece of equipment, there is one absolutely critical question you have to ask yourself every single time. And the answer to that question, am I trained and authorized? It has to be yes, every single time. Operating machinery without the proper training and authorization is one of the main reasons for severe accidents. It puts you in danger, and it puts everyone around you in danger. There are just no exceptions to this rule, period. So we've gone from yourself to your team, and now we're going to expand to the widest circle yet, your role in protecting the entire workplace, and beyond that, our shared environment. Look, you are on the ground every single day. That makes you the eyes and ears of the entire safety system. What does that mean? It means reporting unsafe conditions the second you see them. It also means reporting every incident. And yes, that includes the near misses, because those close calls are incredibly valuable warnings. And this, right here, this says it all. The real reason for reporting isn't about pointing fingers or getting someone in trouble. It's about gathering information. The details you provide today are the lessons we need to prevent someone else from getting hurt tomorrow. It's that simple. You know, this responsibility, it goes beyond just the 4 walls or the fence line of the workplace. It's about making sure your work doesn't harm the environment. That means handling waste the right way, taking extra care to prevent spills, and just generally being a good steward of the land, the water, and the air around your work site. Okay, let's bring this all home. At the end of the day, all your choices lead to one of 2 outcomes. And I want to look at the huge contrast between compliance and, well, the consequences of not complying. It's like a tale of 2 workplaces, isn't it? On one side, you've got compliance. And the results? They speak for themselves. Fewer injuries, better health for everybody, and work that just gets done safely and on time. But on the other side, you have non-compliance. And that leads to a whole world of hurt. Injuries, disciplinary action, maybe even legal trouble, and environmental damage. The choice is pretty clear, and it's a choice you make every single day. So let's circle back to this idea. Your active participation, it isn't just a nice to have. It's not a bonus. It is the absolutely essential ingredient. You just can't have an effective safety program without your full buy-in and commitment. So as we wrap this up, I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. And it's not about some grand plan for tomorrow or next week. It's about right now. What is one specific, tangible thing you can do today to make your workplace safer for yourself and for everyone on your team? You know, have you ever just stopped and thought about all the invisible systems that are working right now to keep you safe? Seriously, whether you're at the office, grabbing a coffee, or just at home, there's this hidden framework designed to protect your well-being. Today, we're going to pull back that curtain, and you might just be surprised to find out who that guardian really is, right? It's a question we almost never think about. We just expect our workplaces to be safe. We walk outside and assume the air we're breathing is clean. But who's actually in charge of making sure all that is true? Well, the answer points to an entity we all know, but maybe not in a role we think about very often: the government. Okay, so let's try to reframe this a little. Forget the idea of some distant, faceless bureaucracy for a second. Instead, I want you to think of the government as a kind of guardian, an invisible one, working behind the scenes in the world of safety, health, and the environment, or as we'll call it, SEH. What's really wild here is just how huge this role is. The government's job in SHE isn't just one little thing. It's massive. We're talking about protecting workers on a construction site, protecting the public in their everyday lives, and protecting the actual environment that we all share. And the main tool for doing all of this? A really carefully constructed system of laws. To really get our heads around this, we can boil it all down to three main jobs. First, the government is the regulator. They're the ones who write the safety rulebook. Second, they're the enforcer. They make sure everybody is actually playing by those rules. And finally, they're the protector, acting as the ultimate safety net for all of us. Regulator, enforcer, protector. Simple, but incredibly powerful. So where does this authority even come from? It's not just made up on the spot. It's built on this solid legal foundation. You've got national laws, specific acts for things like labor and environmental protection, and even big international agreements from bodies like the International Labor Organization, or ILO. This is the bedrock, the solid ground that gives our guardian its power. All right, so if the government is our guardian, its first big task is to create the rulebook. Let's take a look at how they actually build this safety playbook that everyone, from a massive corporation to a tiny local business, has to follow. And here's the thing. This playbook isn't written once and then just left to gather dust on a shelf. Nope. It's a living document. It all starts with those foundational laws, sure, but the key part is that it evolves. As new technologies pop up and we discover new risks, the laws get updated. And all the while, they're being compared to international standards to make sure they're using the best, most modern practices from all over the world. So what's the whole point of this playbook? It's pretty simple, actually. Clarity. The laws are there to lay out exactly what employers and employees need to do to keep everyone safe. It creates a level playing field where everyone, from a giant factory to your corner cafe, knows exactly what their responsibilities are. No guesswork involved. Now, having a great playbook is one thing, but you also need a referee on the field to make sure the game is being played fairly and, more importantly, safely. And that brings us to the enforcement role. This is the watchdog in action. So how does this watchdog actually operate? Well, one of the most direct ways is through on-site inspections. Government inspectors can show up for a routine check or, and this is a big one, they can show up completely unannounced. Their whole job is to be the eyes and ears on the ground, spotting potential hazards before they can cause any real harm. And what happens if an inspector does find something wrong? They've got tools to make people take action. An improvement notice is basically a formal warning shot. It says, hey, we found a problem and you have until this specific date to get it fixed. But for really serious dangers, they pull out the prohibition notice. That's the big red stop sign. It means an activity is so dangerous that it has to stop right now. Immediately, until it's made safe. But the watchdog isn't just about preventing things. When a serious accident does happen, the government steps in to investigate. They're trying to answer three key questions. What went wrong here? Who is accountable? And, the most important one of all, how do we make absolutely sure this never, ever happens again? This quote really just nails it. Without enforcement, without those inspections, without those notices, the laws are just words on a page. Enforcement is what gives them teeth. It's the critical step that turns a rule in a book into real, tangible protection in the real world. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. This system isn't just about preventing someone from, say, tripping over a wire at work. It's about a much, much bigger picture, one that directly involves your long-term health and the health of the planet we all share. I mean, think about jobs in mining or construction, where people might be exposed to hazardous stuff every day. The government is the one setting the legal limits for how much of a dangerous substance a worker can be exposed to. They track diseases that are linked to certain jobs, they enforce basic hygiene standards, and they support health monitoring programs to catch problems as early as possible. This is about protecting someone's health for their entire life, not just for their shift. And that protection, it doesn't stop at the factory gates. It extends out into our communities. These regulations are what stop companies from just dumping their waste wherever they want. They're the reason we monitor the quality of our air and water, and they force big projects to complete what's called an environmental impact assessment, to figure out the potential harm to the community and the local ecosystem before a single shovel hits the ground. So, we've got the rule book, we've got the referee. Now let's get down to it. The bottom line. Why does any of this really matter? What's the big takeaway? A really crucial point here is that this is not a one-way street. The government might lead the charge, but the system only actually works when everyone, and I mean everyone, plays their part. It's a partnership. The government sets the framework,
Employers put the safety practices in place, and employees follow the rules and speak up when they see a problem. It's like a three-legged stool. If any one of those legs is weak, the whole thing just tips right over. And when you look at the results, the difference is just night and day. When you have strong enforcement, you get what you'd expect: fewer accidents, workers who are legally protected, a healthier environment, and public trust in the system. But with weak enforcement, well, you get the opposite: a rise in accidents and even deaths, environmental damage, and a complete loss of faith that anyone is looking out for you. The stakes really could not be higher. So there you have it. We've kind of uncovered this whole system. The government as the regulator, the enforcer, and the protector. This invisible guardian is working all around us all the time. Which leads me to one last question. And this one isn't for me to answer. It's for you. Now that you can see the system, where do you fit in?